Jay from Farriery Tuition, and but I had an interesting case come up this week. I thought it might be an opportunity to get a video showing this particular horse. It's a big horse. It's like a French draft type horse. It's probably only about 16.2, but it's heavy. It was lame, and she'd like a second opinion, and he was quite happy for me to go over it, and we worked on it. We had a few chats about it together, about what we could try, but it just carried on being lame. It's been diagnosed with arthritis in its hinds, but it's also got arthritis in its dip joints now, distal phalangeal joints. And what's happened, this horse has got not like draft horse feet. They're really thin hoof walls, quite thin soled. It's got hardly any depth to them, coronary band to the floor, hardly any depth there whatsoever. And I think what's happened, because it's so heavy, the foot just starts to flare as soon as it's got any sort of growth. They've just broken back to nothing, and it's just really footsore now. I was wondering about trying the Squish Pads, because I was listening to a podcast of Danny Bennett's the other day, the lockdown podcast, as I hope most people are listening to that. He was talking about these Squish Pads, and I thought it might be quite a good option to try on this horse, but I wasn't quite sure. He sent me a couple of pairs. I ordered a couple of pairs. This is 2.5. I think this might do it. There is a 3, so we might have to use a 3. That's a number 5. Libero. So this is quite big, so it should fit, but we'll see. We've got another one we can use as well. They're interesting, really, like a clog design, so you can see it's beveled off all the way around. It's also got this big cuff, so we can glue them on, but I'm also going to cast them on as well, because I think what's possibly happening with this horse, like I said, it's got quite thin hoof walls, so I was going to show you on this freeze-dried specimen. As the deep digital flexor tendon obviously pulls on its attachment and the dip joint flexes, if it's quite not great attachment, if it's a weak laminal bond, because it's a big heavy horse as well, then we're obviously going to get some sort of stretching of the laminae. But I think you also get as well, as you get a flex of the hoof wall as that presses against the ground reaction force, so you get this sort of dishing effect. I think it's getting a certain amount of pain from the actual wall giving. My idea is that we've got the clog design, so very squishy as well, so it's going to have some dental impression in the back half of the foot. We've got a seated area there, so we're not going to get any pressure around the tip of P3. So we've got lots of nice soft area, but we've also got this hard area, which I'm going to reinforce with a cast as well. So hopefully it takes away any sort of flex of the hoof wall as the horse is walking, but also we've got this big beveled edge for the horse to roll into its stride rather than having to press its toe into the ground. He sent me down this super glue as well, so you can super glue them on the foot surface, and then acrylic around the cuff, and then fingers crossed it might be a bit more comfortable. Hi, I'm Jay from Farriery Tuition, and today we're going to be fitting a squish pad from the shoeing lab on a horse that's a little bit footsore, and it's got some osteoarthritis in the distal interphalangeal joint. So Vic's very footsore, so we're going to try one of these cuff shoes on, and we're going to use some acrylic and bond them on with that. These pads are really quite squishy and they've got some give in them, and you can see that they're seated out in this area. So if she's getting any pain from the distal phalanx compressing against the solar corium, this part is completely sort of free from any pressure, and we're going to dental impression the back half of the foot. First thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to just trim the cuff, because she's quite low in the heel, so we're going to trim so it doesn't come into contact with her coronary band, and this will still leave plenty of cuff for our acrylic. Good girl. So you can see it's just cleared this area because it would be sticking up into her coronary band. Also see that the cuff at the front isn't in contact with the ground, well, with the dorsal hoof wall, because it's at a slightly different angle to her foot. So I think what we're going to do, we're going to remove the cuff. You can see these 2 notches. So we're going to remove the cuff so we can get a bit more of a snug fit. And the acrylic will go behind the cuff, but we're also some cast material. We're going to cast them on as well. So you can see we've removed the cuff quite easily. So she's got quite long feet. We can now slot this back exactly where we want it to get a nicer fit. Now she's quite comfortable, stood on the rubber matting, but you can see how her sole's quite thin and she's got lots of stones in her white line. So we're just going to clean the foot out. I don't think we're going to be removing anything because everything she's got she needs to keep. Just take these small rags of periopal. Just down the sides of her frog clefts and any dirt. I think we'll just take this pointy toe back slightly. So we'll just trim some of the hoof wall, the dorsal hoof wall, just so we can get a good bond with our acrylic, so any acrylic can run down into the bottom of the cuff. So we're just going to apply some arty mud to her foot because she's going to have some dental impression on there. So we're just going to smear this on her frog, down the frog clefts, and that'll make a lovely environment that nothing is going to breed in and cause any thrush or any other infections prior to putting the shoe on. And if there's excess, we don't want any dental impression in front of the point of frog. So if there is any excess, we'll trim it back. It's probably a little bit too much, so we'll just thin it out. But we don't want excess pressure in the back half of the foot. We just want to distribute that weight. So our excess dental impression is going to come around the back of the bulbs of the heels. And what we can do, we can just cling film that on. And then we can remove the pad, and then the dental impression should be perfect just where we want it. So now the dental impression should have set, so we can take our cling wrap off. You can see we've got a lovely mould around the bulbs of the heel, so when we cast around the back, we're not going to put any pressure on the bulbs. So now we can just take our pad off, and we can see that we've just got excess material that we can take away, trim away with our knife. And now that's perfectly moulded. It's not overfilled. It's at a level, so when she's bearing weight, she'll bear weight into the dental impression, and also the squish pad, which is going to give some sort of relief as well. So now we're going to apply some super glue. But before we put some super glue on, we're just going to use an activator. This will make the super glue go off quicker and it'll be a stronger bond. This is super glue from the shoeing lab, developed for these pads, so we'll see how it works. Reapply our pad back where it was originally. And now we can fill the cuff with the acrylic, but you have to fill the cuff while the foot is weight bearing, and the cuff comes into the foot. So if you're doing it unweight bearing, then you won't have a true bond where the hoof wall is in a different position. We're just going to keep filling behind the cuff with our acrylic. This is 3rd millennium, but you can use any type of acrylic until it starts to come out. So we're also going to use a 2-inch hoof cast because she's got really quite thin hoof walls for a big heavy horse, so there's a lot of flex in that hoof wall. So although we want the flex in the bearing border, we don't want to be the hoof ought to be flexing and pulling against the laminate attachment. So we're going to cast around the whole squish pad. So hopefully she'll have flexibility where she needs it, and then strength and reinforcement everywhere else. So be careful to keep away from the hairline. I always like to soak my cast first. I know some people like to put it on just without soaking it and then use a wet sponge. You can do either, but I just think you get a more of a deeper sort of penetration with the moisture if you soak it first. When you're just sponging it, I know it activates the glue, but I think once you're using a full cast, then there's quite a depth of cast. I'm not sure you're getting all the way down there. And then we can cling film wrap that on there until it sets. Just smooth down the cast with our gloves and our roll of cling film. Make sure everything's pressed in nice and tight. We've got a dental impression around the bulbs of the heels, so our cast is not going to be pinching against the soft, sensitive heel bulbs. And then we should just let it cut, let it set. So she seems to be walking okay. She's taking her a while to get used to them, but it's on level ground. Seems to be walking well. But yeah, we've fitted the squish pad to her. She was footsore. She's also got arthritis of the distal and phalangeal joint. And she's definitely walking okay. So we've got the squish pad, we've got the dental impression, just to cushion the back half of the foot. We've also got the vet wrap. We used the super glue, and then we used the third millennium acrylic. And she seems to be walking out quite well. They work. It's the first pair I've put on, so hopefully she'll get used to them. She can find her own comfort in them because they've got a lot of give in the pad where it squishes down. And fingers crossed, she'll start to get better. But we'll let you know. So you can see we've cast, not up to the hairline. You can just see a small amount of acrylic there. We can trim that off. The dental impression is still there, but we've got a nice smooth finish on the cast all around the back of the bulbs of the heel. But the point of breakover is still further back than it would be if she was barefoot, which will make her ease into her stride a lot easier. Right, Vic? So we've shod the horse, and yeah, it was definitely a bit more comfortable. Way off sound, but it's got lots of other problems as well. But we'll see how that goes. But as far as the product is concerned, I was quite impressed with it, really. They're pretty easy to use, pretty straightforward. I can think of lots of uses for them, really. Obviously good for laminatics. They just slot on the foot. When you try them on the foot and offer them up, it will stay on there without any cling film glue or anything. So it'd be good for even flat-footed horse, or a horse that you have to shoe on gravel. You know, it always breaks its foot up. You can just maybe slot one of them on while you're shoeing the other foot and then take that off. It would stand there nice and comfortably then and not break its foot up. So there's lots of uses for them. So I thought they were pretty good. Anyway, we'll see you in the next video. Cheers. Bye.